Hey everyone, it has actually been 1 year since we bought the long range dual motor Model 3, and we'll be talking about how that experience has been and if the car's held up over the last year. Starting here with charging, because that's one of the biggest unexpected benefits, is charging this in and plugging in and getting an extra 12 miles per hour of charging range over the standard range or LFP model rear wheel drive Model 3 has actually been quite nice. I thought I wouldn't care about it. However, sometimes you'll plug in, you won't realize you'll drive a lot that day and need a faster charge. Getting that extra range faster has been nice. So the V3 current wall protector, that is a benefit. You will get faster charge speeds at home if you're using that versus the mobile connector, where if you are plugging that into a 1450 NEMA outlet, you're still only going to be capped at the 32 miles per hour range. So 44 with the long range and performance, 32 with the mobile connector, or even using this on the LFP, you'll only get 32 max range. As we move into the inside of the car, let's take a look at the efficiency. So this battery is right now at 73%. I've driven 13,500 miles with an average efficiency of 267 watt hours per mile. That is about 10% less, 15% less efficient than the rear wheel drive. My wife's LFP with about the same distance is averaging 230 watt hours per mile for efficiency. And this is using as well the vehicle without the aero covers, which does impact efficiency. So I have those removed, and so you could expect to get a little bit better efficiency if you keep the aero covers on, or even use some aftermarket ones, not just the stock. At 73%, we're showing 254 miles of range. This is really promising. I will tell you that for charging, I do keep this vehicle garaged. I do have a mini split AC, which keeps the garage temperature pretty cool, because when the Powerwall discharges or this car is charging and there's excess heat, especially during the Arizona summers, these cars are expelling heat into the garage, which is really keeping it super hot. So having a mini split really helps. That being said, this is only about a less than 3% battery degrade. So we were experiencing about 4% from the LFP. I haven't cycled the battery to 0 to charge to 100 or anything like that. Just really leaving it and charging it between every day, like around 60 to 70% is all we've kept it at. I don't even go to 80 because I don't need that level of range. It's actually like less than, it's like 2.5% off the max of 358. So at 73% of 254, this car max range is at about 349 or so. And so that's been really nice. I do use this car for road trips. So unlike the LFP, the road trip experience, and that was why we bought this vehicle, was for a few factors. We needed the extra range for road trips. So this allows us to stop once over a really long trip. We go about 2.5 hours to Yuma, Arizona from Scottsdale. And then from there, we can make it all the way to our destination with maybe 10-15% left in San Diego, and then plug in for overnight charging for the next day. This is a stark difference from the rear wheel drive standard range, where we had to stop twice on the way there and risk, we're always arriving with single digit percent range, and then on the way home have to stop up to 3 times to charge. And this is when we would go to like 100%. And so having that extra range, which right now buying the new rear wheel drive at 270 is, pretty nice, and that will actually suffice for a lot of people. But on the older cars, charging is only to 80-90% of 230 or 240 or 250 max was quite difficult, and much more frequent stops. The supercharging, again, and on longer range, I haven't found to be that beneficial. It's rare to find a V3 charger, and they are becoming more common. The long range and performance vehicles and the Model Ys and the S's can charge up to 250 kilowatts of max charge for like over 1,000 miles of range. It only lasts for a few minutes, and it only happens when your vehicle's at a very low state of charge. Those stations are frequent. They aren't always on your direct path. So the benefit of there is more of a long-term benefit. And again, as there's so much high heat transfer on the battery, I've also found that in the summers, especially here, that range is not, that level sometimes isn't even achievable on a V3, which is dedicated for you. And I've found ranges like drop dramatically because the vehicle can't handle that much power coming through, and it's only as efficient as a V2, or sometimes even less, like a V2 that's shared with somebody else. So Being able to charge faster at superchargers, I think right now shouldn't be too much of a factor if in the more near term, like over the next year or two. However, as V4 comes out and more software updates come out that may optimize how these cars charge, that may prove to be an extra benefit. So I haven't found that to be too helpful on road trips. Again, on road trips, let's talk about Autopilot. So this vehicle for late 21 has the LiDAR removed from the vehicle. So there's no radar in this car. It's purely relying on software and the cameras. I have found it's not as good as when we had the radar. So phantom braking is definitely increased on this vehicle versus my 2019, 2020, which is really sad. I do still think long term it's going to get better because with full self-driving, there's a different tech stack that's used there, and if they start to update all the other cars with Autopilot with that software, hopefully things get better. So it is something to keep in mind if you're buying for the first time and testing Autopilot. 80-90% of the time it's going to be great. However, it's still going to break unexpectedly, and it's like, why? I don't understand, and there may be other reasons, and you will get this adrenaline spike that's so frustrating and annoying. And then for passengers, for some, they could be like, anti-Tesla right there. Like, this is so stupid. Why would you use this? How dangerous is this? Although when it is working most of the time, it's amazing, especially if you're in these cities that have incredible amounts of traffic. You'll save your calf muscles, your leg. You can just focus and not have as much mental stress during your normal commute. So something to think about. Performance-wise, the 0 to 60 is really fast. However, the pickup on the freeway from like 30 to 60 and higher is quite noticeable on this car, and definitely noticeable on the performance. The rear-wheel drive is still quite fast, and that's totally fine. And that should be another factor if, like, considering in the used market, like, why would I pay this extra if, these LFPs now have quite high range. The performance is quite significant. Think of it almost as like a huge engine upgrade if you were to buy a gas car, and those are quite expensive to do. So 0 to 60 in 4.2 versus the 5.8 is quite significant. It was already a big deal when it was just 4.2 compared to the 5.3, which were the older standard range cars. This car is also eligible for a boost upgrade. That's something to think about. You cannot buy faster speeds with the standard range. This car you can upgrade for $2,000, which I haven't done, is 4.2 seconds. Will drop the 0 to 60 down to 3.7. And then that's only going to be about a 0.6 second difference now from the Model 3 performance. So performance is great. Sound system is great. Other thing that's different is ambient lighting. So if we go into settings here and go into light, this is missing from the standard range. You won't see ambient lights in any of those vehicles. You only see this in the performance and long range. And so that impacts the footwells for the driver. It impacts it for the passenger. And then you'll see storage options on the right-hand side. Everything else has held up really well. From a maintenance perspective, we've done a cabin air filter change for $57, $58 where Mobile came to do this. You can buy these filters and look up DIY on YouTube and do it yourself. However, it's a small savings relative to the cost of the filters and the labor, and Tesla coming to your house and just taking care of it has been awesome. So if you haven't done that and there's a weird smell in your car, please get your filters changed and do that maintenance. It's really basic. Other maintenance that I've had Tesla look at was the HVAC. So I thought I had issues with the HVAC system. However, when I've had this windshield cracked and needed to be replaced, there was a period of time where a firmware update needed to be pushed because for some reason it impacted the HVAC. Like the HVAC wasn't working correctly, and I know the glass has to be recalibrated with the Autopilot cameras, but essentially the glass company had to message Tesla, and then Tesla pushed a firmware update to this vehicle where then the HVAC would work. And when I say it wasn't working and then it works, what I'm talking about is we would have the temperature set. I have it typically set it's between 72 and 74 degrees. The car would just not get there. It would felt like the car, the internal sensor was off of what the actual internal cabin temperature was, and thus it just wasn't kicking in. So I always had to manually override the HVAC system to get it to temperature. The firmware update pushed, and then things were resolved. The second item around the HVAC system that I learned recently that is mainly impacting in the summer is if it's too hot out and the battery is at risk of overheating, it will divert the AC, it feels like, out of the main cabin where you'll only get a fan blowing to kind of cool down the battery. And I've mainly experienced that when supercharging, when it's been really hot out. So you can imagine it's already super hot, the battery is hot, it's accepting good charge, and then supercharging increases the temperature more, and then running the AC at the same exact time, it's like too much. And so there are times on the road trip on the way back from San Diego where it's 105, 110 out. We've been running the AC, and then as soon as we start to supercharge, it's not getting cold, and we're relying now like on our sweat and the fan blowing to keep us cool. It's not at dangerous levels, it's still like somewhat cooler. However, until the supercharging is done, it was really annoying. And then roughly maybe 10 minutes later, after leaving the supercharger, the AC would work at full capacity again. So that's something that I don't remember that actually happening with the previous car from 2019. It may be something that's unique to the heat pump, which is supposed to be more efficient. So if anyone knows the reasons there, please throw it in the comments. That's something to think about if you are in a really, really hot climate. This was not happening during the winter time or anything else. Speaking of wintertime, so seasonality, and we've talked about the difference between NCA and LFP in my other video. Winter performance has been fine. It doesn't get that cold here. It's the low 30s at the most, and that's assuming you're even driving around at 4 a.m. in the morning. It's a lot warmer during the day in Scottsdale, Arizona, and other parts of Arizona by the time you're likely driving. So have had no real performance issues for range or anything like that outside the AC for any temperature range in this state. And so if you're also in colder climates, again, this is still maybe the better vehicle for places where you're getting 0 or below temperatures during the winter time, and you need that extra power to preheat the car. The steering wheel, which they come with preheated or heated steering wheel, and is now stock with heated seats in the front and the back, which used to be an upgrade. So no issues there. The last change, which is also pretty cool to maybe to help with the price increase, is this is the gray metallic vehicle, and that has now it's an included color for this car. It's not included for all cars. It was a $1,000 upgrade at the time, and is now not something that you have to pay for. Outside of that, this car has really been great. Again, we haven't had to change the tires yet, no brakes, no other issues, mechanical or cosmetic, that we've really run into. 1 year later, I would still buy this car all over again. It's unfortunate that you can't, so hopefully you have luck on the used market. But if I were you and your income's, your taxable income's under 150K and you're located in the US, take advantage of that tax credit as that kicks in once you get cars delivered starting in January, and hopefully you're able to get some new upgrades with whatever Tesla is planning. So have a good day. Thanks for listening, and talk to you in the next one. Take care.